2025 is the best time to be a fighting game fan. Most series are thriving, coming back from the dead, and some even have professional circuits with large prize pools and big sponsorships. It feels like every game is bigger than it's ever been, and the entire scene is growing. Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and Guilty Gear, the most popular fighting games, have been the default entry points for newcomers and veterans alike. These are some of the genre's founding fathers, eclipse their competition sales-wise, and has a huge tournament turnout. And this is cool. I love people playing fighting games. Personally, I got into fighting games with Super Street Fighter 4. I remember picking up Ryu, learning the fundamentals, building execution muscle memory, adapting to my opponents, and even attending locals to improve. However, everything changed in 2016. Street Fighter V's disastrous launch might have been the best thing to happen to the fighting game community. The best way to describe this game at launch was barren, and what was there barely worked. If you weren't fighting your friends in person, playing online with a god-awful netcode, or going into training mode, you really weren't playing this game. Like many others at the time, I was disappointed and asked my friends what they were playing instead. Next thing I know, I was playing Tekken 7, Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator 2, BlazBlue Central Fiction, Injustice 2, Under Night In-Birth, and everything I could get my hands on. Suddenly, my narrow understanding of fighting games, which was really just Capcom games, began to expand. There's too much cool stuff out there to just play one game, is what I thought until I played The King of Fighters 14. So for those who haven't seen this game before, let's address the elephant in the room. The game looks bad. Oh my god, thank you, I had no idea. After getting past the dated graphics and visuals, what's here is a remarkably solid fighting game with a huge cast of characters, incredible music, one of the best lobby systems, an arcade mode that told the story, and tons of unlockables. When I picked up the game a few years after launch, I couldn't find any matches online, so I played offline mode, watched tournament matches, and promised myself to play KOF 15 after the game was announced, and the rest is history. While there are plenty of other great fighting games with smaller communities, I want to shine a spotlight on a criminally underappreciated franchise, The King of Fighters. I'd like to talk about why, out of all the fighting games I've played over the past 12 years, KOF is what I've been enamored with and how it might be the fighting game that you've been looking for. Now, let me ask you something. What's the most important thing in a fighting game? There are no wrong answers, honestly, but characters are probably somewhere near the top. SNK's characters have always been distinct, if not a bit inspired. Not only are these characters stylish and well dressed, but a ton of their personality can be found when looking at them. K-Dash, yes, that's how you pronounce his name, sports a black leather suit, doesn't smile, has two colored gloves, wears glasses to cover his face, and his stance looks like he's completely relaxed, carefree. It could be the 90s kid in me, but this character is what being cool in the late 90s and early 2000s was all about. Terry Bogard, the face of SNK, has been a beloved character for over 30 years now. Whether it's his classic Fatal Fury or Mark of the Wolves design, streets love Terry. There's a reason why he was picked to represent SNK in Street Fighter and Smash Bros. Additionally, Street Fighter would go even further by including banned Super Smash Bros. Character Mai Shiranui, whose popularity can be attributed to, you know what, I'll let you figure this one out. On the topic of Smash, Masahiro Sakurai, Smash Bros. Creative director, dedicated a few minutes admiring SNK's characters. Like, he's literally showing these characters off like they're action figures. Everyone who's played these games adore these characters, and the funniest part about this is that I'm only scratching the surface. Look at Iori Yagami's KOF 15 redesign and tell me he doesn't got that shit on. Want something more mysterious or reserved? Check out Chizuru Kakura or Ryo Sakazaki. Mai is not your cup of tea? Luong, Vanessa, Dolores, and Angel got you covered. Everyone is here. Nevertheless, characters are the tip of the fighting game iceberg. When spending hours in the lab working on execution, combos, and learning matchups, you'll be listening to a ton of music. So you're probably wondering, how's the music? To which I'd respond, some of the industry's finest. Long-running fighting game franchises don't have bulletproof pasts. Every Third Strike has a Street Fighter V, every Tekken 3 has a Tekken 4, every Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator 2 has a Guilty Gear 2 Overture, and SNK is no different. While SNK hasn't always stuck the landing, the same can't be said about SNK's sound team. Since KOF 96, SNK has been on a generational run with fighting game music. KOF's soundtracks can be energetic and exhilarating, but they can also be smooth and uplifting. SNK achieves this through leveraging a ton of genres, offering something for everyone's tastes. Team Yagami's KOF 96 theme, Stormy Saxophone 2, which has been remixed countless times, finds the saxophone effortlessly accompanying the electric guitar with the drummer in the back. An electric guitar and a saxophone sound like they have nothing in common until you hear this track. KOF 15's Great Grit finds two guitars competing for center stage until they eventually work together to complement one another. This track captures the excitement of the unknown as the Ikari warriors try to keep the world safe. Team Heroes Under the World of features this energetic quartet of electronic synths, drums, electric guitar, and bass blending together to make this upbeat, energetic battle theme. The idea of the hero team training to this theme in the name of the track Under the Control of, foreshadowing events of the plot, is nothing short of genius. And do you remember how I said the series went through some rough patches earlier? Well, here's what the sound team made during this phase. If you think I'm nitpicking the best songs from past soundtracks, I promise I'm not. Longtime fans of the series have felt this way for a while now. Tears, Stormy Saxophone 5, Asaka, Let's Go to Seoul, Resonant Objects, Soy Sauce for Geese, Tranquilizer, Inner Shade, Goodbye Asaka, Fairy, and so on belong in my Mount Rushmore of fighting game soundtracks. And thankfully, being aware of everything they've made, SNK included a DJ station in KOF 15, allowing players to choose which songs they'd like to listen to from throughout the entire series. I do wish we had all the arranged soundtracks though. Regardless, this needs to be the standard for fighting games moving forward. I also love how certain tracks are locked behind completing the arcade mode. In parallel to unlocking team endings and learning more about KOF's rich cast of characters, players are given a good reason to play through the story mode. Although KOF's story mode doesn't have Street Fighter 6 or Tekken 8's presentation, it more than makes up for it with its deep lore, numerous story arcs, and realized world. I think the best way to highlight the appeal of KOF's story is by quickly summarizing the first story arc. Thousands of years ago, a being was born from the earth called Orochi. This powerful being was created to protect Mother Nature from mankind. Over the years, Orochi began amassing followers and even started a clan. The 8 strongest warriors from this clan were known as the Hakushu. As more time passed and humans began industrializing, trees were cut down, pollution was spreading, natural resources were drained, and Orochi wasn't happy with where we were headed. Unwilling to watch the planet fall apart, Orochi and the Hakushu declared war on mankind. In the midst of this global conflict, 3 clans stood in defiance: the Kusanagi, Yasukani, and the Yatta. With their combined might and their family's mystical sacred treasures, they defeated the Hakushu and Orochi by sealing him away for thousands of years. As time passed, Orochi's seal began to weaken and the Hakushu devised a plan to separate the clans responsible for stealing their god. Basically, a Hakushu member impersonated a Kusanagi clan member and murdered the head of the Yasukani's wife, prompting the Yasukanis to make a blood pact with Orochi to destroy the Kusanagis. The Yatta clan remained neutral as they refused to interfere with other clans' business, and if you thought any of that was interesting, that was just the prologue. Before the events of KOF 95, Gonitz, the head of the Hakushu, approaches the host of the KOF 94 tournament, Rugal Bernstein. Suffering a humiliating loss to Kyo Kusanagi, heir to the Kusanagi clan, Goro Diamond, and Benimaru Nikaido, Rugal sought out power. Curious of Rugal, Gonitz defeated him and provided Rugal some of Orochi's power. Confident of his newfound power, Rugal hosted the King of Fighters tournament in 1995 and was defeated again. Confident after his fight with Rugal, Kyo fights Gonitz where he nearly dies in one hit. This defeat damaged Kyo's pride and lit a fire in him to finally improve. KOF 96's host was left intentionally vague for narrative reasons. After the hero team won the tournament, Chizuru Kagura, descendant of the Yatta clan and host of the tournament, confronted Kyo Kusanagi and Iori Yagami, descendant of the Yasukani clan. Chizuru warned them Orochi was on the verge of being resurrected. Before Kyo and Iori could respond, Gonitz appeared, destroyed the stadium, fought the 3 of them, and Gonitz took his life after losing. With Gonitz defeated, Chizuru said they need to work together like their ancestors to prevent Orochi's revival. Kyo and Iori refused to work with each other until the King of Fighters 97. KOF 97 starts with Iori suffering from mysterious headaches and hallucinations. Uninterested in this year's KOF, the ghosts of Vice and Mature, Iori's previous teammates and members of the Hakushu, haunted Iori's dreams, taunting him for not killing Kyo. Frustrated, he entered this year's tournament but actually teamed up with Kyo and Chizuru, forming Team Sacred Treasures. In the midst of this year's tournament, newcomers Yashiro, Shermie, and Chris suddenly realized they're one of the 4 Heavenly Kings tasked with reviving Orochi. In order to achieve this, they needed fighting energy which can be harvested from this year's King of Fighters tournament. On the verge of Orochi's revival, Team Sacred Treasures confront Team Orochi one last time. After a challenging battle between Team Sacred Treasures and Orochi, Iori grabs Orochi as Kyo delivers the final blow. In a weakened state, Chizuru quickly seals Orochi as everyone passes out. And this brief synopsis only scratches the surface of everything that really happened in the Orochi saga. This quality of storytelling exists within each of KOF's arcs. New heroes, antagonists, and other world-shattering events are constantly happening in the KOF. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, fans were eagerly waiting for the next installment of KOF to see what happened to their favorite characters. However, I do wish that SNK did a better job at telling this story. If you were experiencing this story at the time back in the 90s, you had to read the manga, developer interviews, magazines, and other sources to fully grasp the weight of what was actually happening. SNK creator Neo Geo now has an excellent video recapping the events of each saga called The Complete King of Fighters Story Explained. And if you want a deep dive on development or another story synopsis, Thorgy's Arcade did an exquisite job with his 4-part KOF retrospective. If anything I just discussed in the Orochi saga intrigued you, I cannot recommend these videos enough. I mean, I practically watch them every year. Anyways, characters, music, and story are cool, but what about the gameplay? Fighting games live and die by their gameplay, so how is it? Well, the King of Fighters doesn't disappoint here either. KOF is a non-traditional 3-on-3 fighting game. When hearing 3-on-3 or Team Fighter, the first thing that probably comes to mind is either Marvel vs. Capcom, Dragon Ball FighterZ, or Skullgirls. Calling assists for coverage, extending combos, and team synergy are the name of the game. Nevertheless, KOF actually has more in common with traditional one-on-one fighters. After selecting 3 characters, players decide the order of their team and fight until they're out of characters. The team structure introduces meter management amongst other synergies players have to assess. Whenever a character is defeated, players receive an additional bar of meter, and their power gauge, the meter at the bottom, increases by a stock. For example, your point character, the first character you choose, can only build 3 bars of meter. Your mid character can build up to 4, while your anchor can store up to 5 bars of meter. This is an excellent and non-intrusive method of introducing a comeback mechanic. Instead of removing defensive options, introducing a crazy new mechanic, or punishing players for using a system, SNK incentivizes players to go crazy with a ton of meter. In KOF's system, you can link supers into each other and choose how much meter you'd like to spend. Using a level 1 super into a level 2 and level 3 are on the table for anchors, and sure, this does crazy damage, but you pretty much get one chance at these combos since they're so resource heavy. I thought I'd briefly touch on this since everyone complains about how volatile and aggression focused modern fighting games are. Speaking of complaints, a recurring argument I hear whenever recommending KOF is, and I quote, "I don't want to learn 3 characters," and then have the audacity to tell me that this is somehow easier. Ever since KOF 14, when I really got into the series, most of the characters have had similar combo structures. Hit confirmed, command normal, and then special or EX special to start a combo. And if this sounds easy, congratulations, you can play like 70% of the cast. But Dogmas, isn't 70 a majority of the cast? If that's the case, don't they all play the same? No. All of the characters have their own nuance, different combo routes, or a unique set of rules. Vanessa, KOF's resident boxer, has a unique command dash allowing her to weave in and out of pressure. Ash Crimson, KOF's infamous charge character, has an install called Sans Culotte, where his, yes he's a he, charge attacks temporarily change into traditional motion inputs, allowing for some monstrous damage if you have the execution. And then there's Angel, who feels like she has more in common with Tekken than KOF characters. KOF offers a plethora of unique playstyles as well, but the core combat system we discussed earlier is much easier to understand than most experienced fighting game players realize. If you learn a meterless combo and how to use meter, you're like 80% done. Not only is this great because it makes the game relatively easy to pick up, but it also allows players to focus more on KOF's fundamentals. Something separating KOF from other 2D fighters is its movement. While there's no wave dashing, characters can walk, run, roll, and use meter to roll out of pressure or strike the enemy back, kind of like a burst. However, the poster child of KOF, and where a ton of depth is introduced, is with jumping. More specifically, hopping. Unless you play games like Marvel vs. Capcom, Tekken, or Melee, I'd imagine movement is one of those things you don't pay much attention to. Nevertheless, advanced movement options fundamentally change neutral, how you approach opponents, and creates mind games around it. UMVC3 introduced plink dashing where players can quickly create or close space. Tekken players create whiffs through backdashing, sidestepping, and can pressure opponents through Mishima-style wave dash. And Melee allows players to create pressure through short hopping, fast falling, and L canceling. All these mechanics introduce a ton of nuance to their system, but all these movement mechanics will take hours to master and even longer to get comfortable with in match. Short hops, conversely, are done by tapping up on the D-pad. That's it. And if you think short hopping is difficult, I implore you to learn how to Korean backdash, plink dash, and shuffle because I promise you they're much harder to do. By streamlining this executional barrier, SNK brilliantly allows players to hop straight into mind games rather than spending hours on mastering movement. And since we're talking about mind games, let's briefly discuss the ramifications short hops and hyper hops present in neutral. Most 2D games find you protecting the sky with uppercuts and other anti-air tools. Short hops, conversely, are too fast for players to react to, thus making them an excellent tool for creating offensive pressure, additional mix-ups, and other options. However, short hops can also be used defensively. If the defender makes a read on your pressure, you can counter hop, do a full jump to land on them, jab anti-air, hop back to create space, trip guarding where you punish your opponent's landing frames, or something else entirely. And obviously, the offender has a plethora of choices beating these options. Dandy J's KOF Zone video beautifully articulates the importance of hopping, preserving space, and describes how to beat each option. Furthermore, all these systems are fundamental mechanics the entire cast has access to. Meaning, KOF grapplers are a special breed of scary. Empty hop command throw combo starters are terrifying. Grapplers with this much mobility are both cool and horrifying. Anyways, once you understand the flow of neutral, the importance of positioning, and each character's nuance, you get one of the best fighting games to watch. Watching pro players masterfully navigate KOF's chaotic neutral is really a spectacle to behold. Latin America dominates the West, while Japan, Taiwan, Korea, and Shanghai, mostly Shanghai if we're being honest, dominates the East. When Shanghai isn't around, ET usually dominates over there, but there's so much competition that he can easily be knocked out by some of Japan's finest like M-Dash or Lagia. And over here in the West, to say Mexico dominates this game would be an understatement. Tampa Never Sleep's KOF weeklies are always dominated by Mexico, and Latin America may as well have a trademark on offline tournaments. Mexico in particular is so competitive that you genuinely never know who's going to win these tournaments. Between Violent Kane, Sombra, Shadow X, Reno, Paco, Tamago, Uedo Asamiya, or some dark horse pick, there's always the battle for the crown. And despite KOF's crazy level of competition worldwide, Xiaohai really just feels like the final boss. While he's had a lot of close calls over the years and obviously hasn't won every tournament, he's the undisputed KOF GOAT. There's even footage online of him beating someone in KOF 98 with one hand. He's the alpha and omega, so when he enters the tournament feels like an anime arc where everyone's trying to beat him. Like, continents are focusing all their knowledge into their strongest players to beat one man. If that's not anime, I don't know what is. Regardless of who's the best, KOF is a series beloved by fans around the world. Latin America and Eastern Asia dominating KOF is pretty well known, but something I rarely hear discussed is how influential the franchise has been over the past 3 decades. While Sakurai cleared up the rumor about KOF influencing Smash Bros, the experience he had beating new players may have introduced the idea of creating a fun fighting game. Now, this is 100% speculation and I could be wrong here, but the competitive culture of arcade fighting games probably played a role in Smash's creation. And speaking of Smash, another area KOF cemented its legacy with is by popularizing the idea of a crossover game. While KOF probably wasn't the first crossover game, it certainly was the most successful and undeniably influenced other games like the Marvel vs. Capcom series. Initially, KOF was supposed to be a crossover of SNK's most popular IPs like Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, Ikari Warriors, and Psycho Soldier. Without KOF 94's success, who knows how long it would have taken for developers to bring fan-favorite characters from other IPs into one game. And similar to popularizing the concept of a crossover game, KOF also revolutionized the idea of telling stories in fighting games. While SNK already achieved this with Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting, most 90s fighting games found you aimlessly fighting in a tournament with incoherent bits of lore at the end of each fight. Takashi Nishiyama, Street Fighter, Fatal Fury, and the King of Fighters creator aspired to create intricate stories for each character with their own arcs and supporting casts. Although Nishiyama had a planned world for Street Fighter, Capcom scrapped it. SNK, however, loved Nishiyama's narrative ambitions. Not only would this result in Fatal Fury receiving a beloved story, but it also paved the way for the King of Fighters' globetrotting adventures. So, is the King of Fighters perfect or the best franchise ever? Absolutely not. SNK's games haven't launched well historically and failed to really find their footing here in the West, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't give it a try. Every day on Twitter and Reddit, I see fighting game players somehow miserable with the current state of fighting games. There are countless threads about developers rewarding too much aggression, fundamentally changing the game's identity, or implementing mechanics drastically altering the nature of their game. And I never understood why fighting game players just deal with these things. Maybe it's in our blood to adapt and move on, but that doesn't mean we can't escape this cyclical trauma. As I write this video in 2025, we're currently in the golden age of fighting games. Virtua Fighter has returned, providing Tekken with some much needed competition. We're a few months away from SNK reviving Fatal Fury, and there's no shortage of other great 2D games to play. Whether I knew it or not, KOF was the fighting game series I've been looking for since I started my fighting game journey over a decade ago. The incredible music, realized world, compelling lore, and fundamentally focused combat system makes KOF one of a kind. And listen, I get it, change is hard. If you've been playing a series for most of your life, you probably don't want to try new things, but that mindset may prevent you from finding your new favorite franchise. And if anything I've said in this video piques your curiosity, you may fall in love with the King of Fighters as I have. Alright, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. I know that this is a big departure from discussions and game essays and horrors and RPG and all that stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to do something a little bit different and talk about a developer that I think is personally criminally underrated here in the West. So yeah, I just wanted to dedicate a video about this franchise and why it is so special and so influential, and why I think if you are a fighting game fan, you might actually enjoy it. And if you're not, there's plenty to love about the characters, lore, and definitely the music, as you guys have been hearing throughout the video. So yeah, fighting games, I'll probably talk about them at some point more in depth, and I definitely have some more fighting game videos in the pipeline that'll come out eventually one day soon. TM. Shout out to all the channel members and Twitch subscribers. Anybody that's seen the streams knows that I'm a fan of fighting games. We definitely talk about them a good chunk. So yeah, this video is definitely a long time coming. If you want to support the channel, I'd really appreciate if you were to consider becoming a channel member, where you'll receive a special Discord role, access to my scripts and outlines, early video access, emotes, and more perks. So a couple of questions before I end the video. Have you played any of the King of Fighters? Which is your favorite if you have? Are you excited for Mark of the Wolves? What's your favorite SNK fighting game or your favorite SNK franchise? How'd you get into fighting games, and which fighting games are you playing right now? Again, thanks for making it to the end. Feel free to join the Discord if you want to talk, where I'm super active, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll check in with you guys in the next one.